Pisces, welcome to Mary's Angel Tarot. This is a general reading for Pisces Sun, Moon, Rising, and Venus. Okay, Pisces, let's get started. Something in you has gone quiet recently, and it's not the quiet of peace. It's the quiet that comes after the noise has been so loud and so relentless and so unending that your nervous system simply stopped registering it. The way people who live next to train tracks eventually stop hearing the trains. You've been living next to something deafening, a situation, a person, a dynamic, a sustained pressure that has been bearing down on you with such force and such persistence that at some point your internal alarm system looked at the incoming data and said, I cannot keep sounding the alarm at this volume indefinitely. And so it went silent. And the silence felt like adaptation. It felt like strength. It felt like, finally, I've grown tough enough that this doesn't affect me anymore. But it wasn't toughness. It was saturation. Your system didn't stop hurting. It stopped reporting the hurt. The way a nerve that's been compressed long enough goes numb, not because the compression has eased, but because the nerve has exhausted its capacity to transmit the signal. You've been numb. Walking through your days with a functional competence that impresses everyone around you, while underneath, in the deep tissue of your emotional body, the compression continues, unacknowledged, unaddressed, accumulating in the silence like water behind a dam that everyone has forgotten is there. I need you to hear what I'm about to say because I think it's the thing you most need to hear and the thing you're least expecting to be told. You've been pushed to your limit, not near it, not close to it, the actual structural, non-negotiable boundary of what your system can absorb. And the fact that you're still standing is not evidence that the limit hasn't been reached. It's evidence that you're the kind of person who keeps standing after the limit has been passed, which is a different thing entirely, a kind of defiant, almost irrational persistence that looks like resilience from the outside, but feels from the inside like running on fumes so thin they barely exist. You're operating past empty, past the reserve tank, past the point where the dashboard lights stopped working because even the warning systems have run out of power. And you've been doing it so long and so convincingly that no one, not the people who love you, not the people who pushed you here, not even you yourself, has fully registered how close to collapse the whole structure actually is. The person who pushed you, or the people, or the situation that functioned as a person, pressing against you with a relentlessness that felt almost sentient in its ability to find your softest spots and lean into them. I want to talk about what they did, and I want to do it without the sanitizing language that spiritual spaces sometimes use to make ugly things palatable. What happened to you was not a lesson wrapped in a difficult package. It was not the universe testing you to see what you're made of. It was not a blessing in disguise waiting to reveal its hidden gift if you could just endure long enough. What happened to you was pressure applied by a person or a situation that did not care about your limits, that did not pause to check whether the load was survivable, that took your capacity for endurance and treated it as an invitation to add more weight, more demand, more expectation, more extraction, interpreting every accommodation as evidence that the next accommodation was available, every yes as a promissory note for the next yes, every time you bent as proof that you could bend further. And you cooperated, not because you're weak, because you're built for cooperation. Because your wiring is oriented toward harmony, toward resolution, toward the reduction of conflict through personal sacrifice. That wiring is not a flaw. In a healthy environment, it makes you extraordinary. It makes you the person who holds groups together, who smooths rough edges, who creates safety for others through their own willingness to absorb discomfort. But in an unhealthy environment, that same wiring becomes a vulnerability. It becomes the thing that's exploited. Because people who push, people who take, people who lean into others without concern for the structural integrity of what they're leaning on, those people can sense your wiring, not consciously, instinctively, the way a predator senses which member of the herd is carrying the most weight. They gravitate toward you because your cooperation is reliable and your limits are invisible and your breaking point seems to exist somewhere past the horizon, always retreating, always making room for one more imposition. But the breaking point was never past the horizon. It was right here, where you are now. And passing it didn't look like breaking, because you're not the kind of person who breaks visibly. You're the kind who fractures internally while the exterior holds. Hairline cracks running through the structure of who you are, invisible to the naked eye, but felt in every step, every interaction, every moment of quiet, where the absence of external pressure leaves nothing between you and the awareness of how damaged the infrastructure has become. You've been walking on fractured foundations and telling yourself you're fine because the building hasn't fallen and the walls are still vertical and from the outside everything looks exactly the way it's supposed to. Look, but you know, in the middle of the night, in the moments between sleep and waking, in the split second of honesty that sometimes ambushes you when you catch your reflection in a window you weren't expecting, you know. And here is where everything changes. Because you didn't come here to be told what you already know. You came here because something in you, something deeper than the numbness and more persistent than the exhaustion, is sensing a shift, a real one, not a motivational poster shift, not an everything happens for a reason shift, a structural, material, tangible reorganization of the conditions of your life that is already underway and that is going to produce results so different from what you've been experiencing that the contrast will feel almost violent. The universe is not just sending you comfort, it's sending you a harvest, a yield, a return on the investment of every ounce of energy you poured into a situation that never paid dividends. And the harvest is not proportional to the pain. It exceeds it. Not because suffering earns rewards, but because the specific combination of endurance and integrity and refusal to become bitter that you've demonstrated through this ordeal has positioned you in the direct path of something that was always moving toward you but couldn't reach you while the noise was too loud and the pressure was too constant and the person who was pushing you was standing between you and the life that was trying to arrive. They're not standing there anymore. Whether they moved or you moved or the universe moved them, the obstruction has shifted. The channel is open. And what's flowing through it is coming fast and coming full and coming with a generosity that is going to feel, after so many months of deprivation, like a different reality entirely. Like stepping from a black and white film into color. Like taking a full breath after breathing through a straw for so long that you forgot lungs could expand this far. The comfort that's approaching is not a vacation. It's not a temporary reprieve between rounds of struggle. It's a new baseline. A permanent restructuring of the conditions of your daily existence that replaces the chronic tension with chronic ease, not the ease of having nothing to do. The ease of doing things that align with who you actually are, rather than things that serve someone else's agenda at the expense of your own. let me talk about the success, because I think you've been so focused on survival that you've lost sight of what's actually available to you now that the survival phase is ending. Success has been stalking you. That's the only word that captures the energy accurately. Not approaching, not arriving, stalking. The way an opportunity stalks a person who doesn't believe they're available for it, circling at the periphery, making small appearances that get dismissed as coincidence or luck, testing the perimeter of your awareness to see if there's an opening it can enter through. It's been doing this for a while, sending signals, placing clues, arranging circumstances that if you were paying attention, if you weren't consumed by the demands of the person or situation that was draining you, you would have recognized as the early indicators of something massive trying to enter your life. You missed some of those signals. I don't say that to make you feel guilty. I say it because understanding that the opportunity has been trying to reach you for longer than you realize changes the way you relate to its arrival. This isn't a brand new possibility materializing out of thin air. This is something with history, something that has been patiently, persistently working its way toward you through channels that were mostly blocked by the weight of what you were carrying. And now that the weight has shifted, now that the channel is clearing, the opportunity is not starting its journey, it's completing it. The distance between you and the success that's been stalking you has been closing for months. And the final stretch, the last few steps between where it is and where you are, is being covered right now at a pace that's about to bring it within arm's reach. The success is going to manifest in an area where you have felt most defeated. That's significant, and I don't want you to miss it. Not in an area where you've been coasting. Not in a dimension of your life that's been functioning adequately. In the specific area where the pushing was hardest, where the pressure was most concentrated, where you invested the most and received the least and questioned your own competence and your own intelligence and your own worth because the returns were so disproportionate to the effort that the only explanation that seemed logical was that you were doing something fundamentally wrong. You weren't doing anything wrong. You were farming in poisoned soil. You were planting seeds in ground that had been contaminated by someone else's dysfunction, someone else's demands, someone else's inability to recognize or support or even tolerate your growth. And the seeds didn't fail because they were bad seeds. They failed because the environment was hostile to their development. The same seeds, the same effort, the same intelligence, the same work ethic, the same creativity planted in soil that isn't poisoned produce abundance. And you're about to see that abundance firsthand in the very area where you felt most like a failure. Which means the experience will carry a double potency, the satisfaction of the success itself layered on top of the vindication of discovering that the failure was never yours. It was always the soil. There's a financial dimension to this that I want to address because I can feel it pulsing in the energy, and I know it's one of the areas where the pushing hit hardest. Money has been tight, not in the comfortable, manageable, I need to watch my spending kind of tight. In the breath restricting, decision limiting, dignity testing kind of tight. The kind where you've had to make choices that no one should have to make. Where you've calculated and recalculated and rearranged and sacrificed and still come up short, and the coming up short has been so chronic and so consistent that you've started to internalize it as a personal characteristic rather than a circumstantial condition. As if being broke were a permanent feature of your identity rather than a temporary symptom of a situation that was structurally rigged to keep you depleted. The financial shift that's coming is not subtle. It's not a few extra dollars in an account that's been running on fumes. It's a material change in the economic architecture of your life that reflects the broader realignment I've been describing. New income, new sources, new channels of financial flow that open specifically because the old channels, the ones that were dammed by the pressure and the pushing and the extraction of your energy by people and situations that took without replenishing, those dams are breaking. And when dams break, the water doesn't trickle, it surges. The financial shift is going to feel sudden, even though it's been building for a long time, accumulating behind the obstruction, waiting for exactly this moment to be released. And when it releases, the relief is going to hit your body before it hits your mind. You're going to feel it in your shoulders first. That dropping, that unclenching, that slow, almost bewildered relaxation of muscles that have been carrying the weight of financial anxiety for so long that they forgot relaxation was an option. And then the mind catches up, and the mind starts doing the new math. And the new math works. For the first time in longer than you want to admit, the numbers add up, not just barely, comfortably, with margin, with breathing room, with the previously unimaginable luxury of not having to calculate whether you can afford to exist this month. Now, I need to talk about the someone because the energy around this person has been building throughout everything I've said, and it's time to address them directly. Someone is looking for you actively, intentionally, with a focus and a determination that goes beyond casual interest or passing curiosity. This person is searching, not in the desperate, romantic, can't live without you way that gets dramatized in love stories. In the deliberate, purposeful, I need to find this specific person because what I have to offer requires their specific participation way. They're looking for you the way someone looks for a missing piece of a mechanism they're building. Not because any piece will do, because the mechanism doesn't function without this particular one. And you are the particular one, not a version of you, not someone like you, with your specific history and your specific skills and your specific combination of wounds and wisdom and hard-earned, pressure-tested resilience. This person might be professional. They might hold a position of influence in an industry or a field or an organization that is relevant to the success I described earlier. They might be the bridge between where you are and where the success lives, the connector, the person who sees your capability not despite the hardship you've endured, but because of it. Because the hardship produced in you a specific quality, a specific temper, a specific grade of steel that their situation requires. Not theoretical capability demonstrated through credentials and presentations. Battle-tested capability demonstrated through the fact that you survived something that would have crushed most people and emerged from it not broken but refined. Or this person might be personal. Someone whose own journey has brought them to a place where what they need most in a companion, a partner, a close ally, is not someone who has lived an easy life. Not someone whose strength is untested, but someone who has been through the fire and carries the evidence in their eyes and their energy and the particular quality of steadiness that can only be produced by prolonged exposure to pressure. They're looking for depth, real depth, not the curated, Instagram-filtered, aesthetically appealing version of depth. The ugly, earned, cost you something kind that sits in the bones and changes the way a person holds themselves, and you have that depth paid for in full. Through every night the pushing kept you awake. Through every moment the pressure made you question your own sanity. Through every instance where the person or the situation that was draining you made you feel like the problem, like the difficult one. like the one whose expectations were too high, or whose needs were too much, or whose desire for basic reciprocity was evidence of selfishness rather than self-respect. What I can tell you about this person's search is that it's not new. They've been looking, moving through their own life with an awareness, sometimes conscious and sometimes not, that there is someone out there whose energy they need, whose presence would complete something incomplete, whose specific, irreplicable essence is the answer to a question they've been carrying. And they've encountered other people along the way, good people, compatible people, people who checked many of the boxes and presented well and seemed on paper like they should be the right fit, but they weren't. Something was always off. Something was always missing. A frequency, a resonance, the particular vibration that only occurs when two people whose journeys were designed to intersect actually intersect. And every not quite right encounter sharpened their sense of what the right encounter would feel like. Every almost but not quite refined their understanding of the specific qualities they were looking for, so that by the time they find you and they're close, the recognition is going to be immediate, not tentative, not let's see where this goes. Immediate. The lock and key click of something that was always meant to connect, finally connecting after a long, wandering search that makes the connection feel not just satisfying, but inevitable. There's something about the timing of this person's arrival that I want to illuminate because it's connected to the larger pattern of everything I've been describing. They couldn't find you while you were buried under the pressure, not because they weren't looking, because you were invisible. The compression you were living under, the diminishment imposed by the person or situation that was pushing you, that compression made you energetically undetectable. Your signal was dampened. Your frequency was muffled. The full, radiant, unmistakable broadcast of who you actually are was being jammed by the noise of a dynamic that was consuming all of your bandwidth. And so this person, searching for your signal, scanning the frequencies, listening for the specific vibration that would tell them, here, this is the one, couldn't find you, you were there, but you were hidden, buried under the weight of someone else's demands. Camouflaged by a life that was so far from your actual identity that the identity itself was unreadable. Now the pressure is lifting, the compression is easing, the noise is fading, and as it fades, your signal is emerging, getting stronger, getting clearer. Becoming detectable to someone who has been searching for exactly that signal for longer than you know. Think of a radio station that was always broadcasting but was being overwhelmed by interference. The station didn't change. The interference cleared. And suddenly the music is audible. And somewhere, someone who has been scanning the dial with the patience of someone who refuses to settle for static is hearing the first clear notes and leaning forward and turning the volume up and thinking there. There it is. That's the sound I've been looking for. I want to return to the pushing because I think there's a dimension of it that we haven't fully explored, and that's important for the completion of this message. The person or situation that pushed you to the limit did something that they absolutely did not intend to do. They forged you, not in the inspirational, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger platitude sense, in the literal metallurgical sense. They subjected you to heat and pressure and repeated impact over an extended period of time, and the result is that the raw material of who you were has been converted into something structurally superior. Not because suffering is noble, not because pain has inherent value, but because the specific type of sustained, relentless, inescapable pressure that you endured happens to be the exact process required to produce the specific type of strength that your next chapter demands. Your next chapter is not for the unforged. The success that's approaching, the comfort that's arriving, the person who's searching, the financial shift that's materializing, none of it is designed for someone who hasn't been through what you've been through. It requires someone who can handle prosperity without losing their grounding. Someone who can receive abundance without becoming entitled to it. Someone who can step into comfort without forgetting what discomfort taught them. Someone who can hold success without letting success define them because they've already been defined by something deeper, something that no external achievement can touch, which is the knowledge of their own capacity to endure. That knowledge is the bedrock, and the bedrock was laid by the pressure, not with your consent, not with your gratitude, but with your participation, willing or not, in a process that has produced in you a foundation so solid that what gets built on it can bear weight that would collapse a lesser structure. I want to say something about comfort because I think the word might be hitting your ears wrong. Comfort, for someone who has been under pressure for as long as you have, might sound like weakness, like giving up, like the soft, cushy, unambitious settling of someone who has stopped reaching and started resting. And that association is itself a product of the pushing. Because the person or situation that pushed you did something insidious alongside the direct pressure. They associated rest with laziness, comfort with complacency, ease with unworthiness. They created an environment where the only acceptable state was striving, grinding, producing, giving, and any departure from that state was coded as failure. You internalized that coding. You absorbed it so deeply that now, standing at the threshold of a life that offers genuine comfort, you feel guilty, as though wanting to not be in pain is somehow a character flaw. As though the desire to wake up without dread and move through a day without hypervigilance and go to sleep without calculating tomorrow's survival is an indulgence rather than a birthright. Comfort is your birthright, not as a reward, not as a payment for services rendered, as a basic condition of human existence that was withheld from you by circumstances that had no right to withhold it. The comfort that's arriving is not a prize for surviving. It's the restoration of something that should never have been taken in the first place. And receiving it fully, without guilt, without the reflexive need to justify it through additional suffering, without the lingering belief that ease must be earned through proportional pain, receiving it is an act of defiance against every system and every person that tried to teach you that your natural state is struggle. There is something happening in the energy right now that I want to name because it's crucial and I don't want it to get lost in the larger message. You are at the inflection point. The exact, precise, geometrically specific point where the arc of your life curves from descent to ascent. You've been descending for a while, not obviously, not in a way that was visible from the outside, but in terms of your internal experience, your relationship with yourself, your access to hope and creativity, and the simple pleasure of being alive, you've been going down. The pressure was pushing you downward. The pushing was compressing your altitude, and you've been traveling in that direction down with such consistency and for so long that the descent started to feel like the only possible direction, like gravity, like the natural, inevitable, unchangeable trajectory of a life that was born under unlucky stars and simply doesn't have access to the upward currents that carry other people to heights you can see but never reach. That descent has ended, not is ending, has ended. The lowest point has been touched. The nadir has been reached. And the arc, the mathematical, gravitational, cosmically governed arc of your life's trajectory is curving right now. In this breath, turning upward with the slow, inexorable certainty of a pendulum that has reached the bottom of its swing and has no choice but to begin the return journey. Because that's what pendulums do. They descend, they reach the lowest point, and then, powered by the same forces that drove the descent, they ascend. The energy doesn't disappear at the bottom. It transforms. Potential becomes kinetic. Downward becomes upward. In the ascent, the beautiful, inevitable, physics-defying ascent is powered by the very momentum that the descent accumulated, which means the harder you were pushed down, the more force is available for the rise. The deeper the nadir, the higher the apex. The more relentless the pressure, the more powerful the upward trajectory. You are about to rise with a force that is directly proportional to the force that pushed you down. Let that land, not as metaphor, as mechanics, as the literal, measurable, observable physics of a life that has stored enormous kinetic energy through an extended descent and is now, at this exact inflection point, converting that stored energy into motion in the opposite direction, up, toward success, toward comfort, toward the person who is looking for you, toward the financial restructuring that removes the ceiling on your material existence, toward the version of your life that the descent was always, in its blind and brutal way, building toward. This message reaching you through Mary's Angel Tarot at this particular moment is itself a marker of the inflection point. Not a cause of it, a marker. Like a flag planted at the exact spot where the trajectory curves. You're here because you've arrived at the turn, and the turn needed to be witnessed, not by other people, by you. You needed to see it, to feel it, to register in your conscious awareness the moment when the direction changed. Because without that registration, without the conscious experience of saying, this is where it turned, this is where the descent ended and the ascent began, you risk missing it. You risk continuing to feel the downward momentum even after the actual direction has reversed, the way a person who's been at sea for months continues to feel the rocking even after they're standing on solid ground. The rocking is phantom, the ground is real, and this message is the ground telling you to trust it, to put your weight down, to stop bracing for the next wave, because the waves are done and what's beneath your feet now is not water but earth. Solid, stable, here to stay earth that will hold you while you remember what it feels like to stand without swaying. The someone who is looking for you is closer than you think. And I want to end with them because their energy is the warmest thing in this entire reading, and I want it to be the last thing that settles into you before I go. This person carries something you need, not in the codependent, you complete me sense. In the practical, collaborative, your skills and their skills create something neither could build alone sense. They have resources you lack, connections you need, perspectives that complement yours in ways that turn your individual capability into something exponentially more powerful. And you have the same for them. Your experience, your resilience, your specific pressure-forged wisdom, these are things they need and cannot find elsewhere. The relationship, whether professional or personal or some category that doesn't fit neatly into either box, is designed to be mutual, reciprocal. Built on an exchange of value so balanced that neither person feels like the giver or the taker. Both give, both receive, both are enlarged by the connection in ways that would be impossible in isolation. They're going to find you soon. The signal is getting clearer by the day. And when they arrive, when the connection is established, when the lock clicks into the key and the mechanism engages and you feel for the first time in a very long time, the sensation of being in the right place at the right time with the right person that sensation is going to reach into the place where the pushing left its deepest marks and begin the final phase of the healing. Not by erasing the marks, by making them meaningful, by demonstrating through the lived experience of a connection that works that the endurance was not pointless, that the pressure, as cruel and as senseless as it felt while it was happening, produced something in you that this person recognizes, values, and needs. That the very qualities the pushing tried to destroy are the qualities that make you irreplaceable in this person's life and in the larger design of a future that is being assembled right now with your name on it in letters that are getting bolder by the hour. You've been pushed to the limit. That chapter is over. The hands that pushed are losing their grip. The weight that compressed you is lifting. And what's emerging from underneath, what's been there all along, preserved and protected and waiting beneath the pressure, like a diamond waiting beneath the earth, is something that the world didn't know it needed until exactly this moment. The world needs it now. The person looking for you needs it now. The success needs it now. The comfort is ready now. And you, tired, fractured, numb, still standing against all reasonable expectation, still breathing, still here, still reading these words with eyes that have seen too much and a heart that has felt too much and a spirit that has endured more than should ever be asked of a single human life. You are ready now. Not because the readiness feels comfortable, because the readiness is simply true. You were forged. You survived the forging. And the thing that was forged is exactly what the next chapter requires. Step into it. The comfort won't bite. The success won't punish you. The person looking for you isn't bringing another version of what you just escaped. They're bringing the opposite. The antidote. The counterweight. The warm hand on the back of someone who has been cold for too long and forgotten that warmth doesn't always come with conditions attached. It's here, all of it, not coming, here, waiting for you to unclench your fists and open your hands and let the harvest fall into palms that have been empty for so long they've forgotten what holding something good feels like. Remember, your hands know. They held good things before the pushing started, and they'll hold them again, starting now, starting here. Starting with the version of you that walked through fire and came out, not unburned but unbroken and ready, finally, terrifyingly, beautifully ready for everything the fire was preparing you to receive. All right, thank you so much for watching Mary's Angel Tarot. Take care of your energy, and I'll see you in the next reading. Bye.